Okay, it's 2:15, so I think I'll make a start. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Rosemary Wette. I'm from the University of Auckland in New Zealand. I tell you that that's the view from my office, but I have a colleague here who probably will tell you that I'm lying, so I wish that it were. The topic of my talk today is quite a small one. It's narrow in focus and may not even be remotely new to most of you, but I hope you'll find it interesting nevertheless. What I'm going to be talking about is the all-important practice phase in EAP writing instruction, and more particularly episodes in the study I carried out where teachers and learners work together to jointly or collaboratively construct a class version of a text. To give an overview of the presentation, I'll start by making some general comments about genre-based instruction and social learning theories. I'll describe the study I carried out, report on the findings as they're related to collaborative writing, and some comments by teachers and interviews, and finish with some discussion and concluding comments. It hardly seems an overstatement, particularly in the light of Rebecca Hughes' plenary yesterday, to quote Ken Highland, English seems to be becoming, and probably has become, less a language than a basic academic skill for many users around the world. This reality poses a number of challenges for students from non-English speaking backgrounds. Written academic discourse is, of course, in a language that's not their first. It's complex and often written in different ways from in their home culture. It generates a permanent text product in which their shortcomings are all too visible, and it's the primary means for assessing academic achievement. For the last 20 years, genre approaches have dominated in EAP writing instruction. However, there have been surprisingly few investigations into what is effective or best practice in EAP writing instruction. And I guess the study that I carried out was, the ultimate aim was just to contribute to knowledge in this area. No one particular method or instructional approach has ever been validated through research so far. The study, I'll be reporting today on part of a larger study. It was an exploratory study of the principles and practices of 7 experienced, well-qualified teachers of EAP writing. Data were collected through observations in which teachers were strongly encouraged not to change their normal practices in any way, and interviews. And I'll be reported on the use of collaborative writing in EAP writing instruction. Genre-based EAP writing instruction has been dominant for more than 20 years now. Scholarly guides such as those written by Ferris and Hedgecock, Gregan, Kaplan and Hyland recommend to teachers that instruction should include analysis of microelements and macro genres and text types, attention to the context in which the text is produced and its communicative purpose, attention to writing processes as well as the products, and ways of developing students' awareness of themselves as writers and of their audience. EAP writing instruction should utilise explicit instruction using model exemplars, guided and independent practice, whole class, group and individual work, and a variety of feedback options. Also influential in the last 20 years have been social theories of learning, the work of Vygotsky and later developments by Landtolf. The main premise of Vygotsky's theories of learning is that social interaction precedes individual cognition. So cognitive learning occurs initially through social interaction, and which then becomes internalized. The term scaffolding describes assistance from a more capable other, usually the teacher, but also a classmate, within a learner's ZPD. And the ZPD is, of course, the space between what a learner can produce on his own and what he is able to produce or perform with the help of an expert guide. Scaffolding has been recommended as a complement to direct instruction. Characteristics of scaffolded assistance, as set out by Landtolf and Tharp and Gallimore, is that it includes explicit instruction, including analysis of models. It includes modelling of text construction processes. It involves eliciting from learners and giving feedback to learners, e.g. encouragement to revise their first drafts. It should utilise tasks that are not simplified, but that are within learners' capabilities. It involves active involvement by and genuine collaboration with learners, and this support is gradually withdrawn as learners gain in proficiency. I've set that out again on the next slide, the phases of writing instruction showing the gradual withdrawal of support from the teacher and positioning what I'm going to be interested in the talk today. Direct and explicit instruction, of course, is the first stage. The teacher introduces the genre, its context and purpose, analysis of flawed or good models of the genre, and text micro-elements. This is followed by the practice phase, where the teacher can model, elicit, question, encourage, recast, scaffold, assist. The teacher works with the class to construct a text exemplar. Assistance can also come from any student, and this is what I'm going to be interested in the talk today. Then also the practice phase also involves individual, group and pair practice tasks, such as peer scaffolding. The final phase is independent performance, where assistance from the teacher or peers is no longer needed. Independent performance is developed and automatised or internalised. The teachers in the study mostly use this basically PPP, deductive approach to writing instruction. Of course, occasionally they also used an inductive approach where the practice phase precedes the direct or explicit instruction. The study. Teachers in the study had advanced academic and professional qualifications of at least a MA. They had 5 to 25 years experience in ESOL and EAP. They were of high standing with good evaluation. So the normal sort of the usual criteria for establishing expertise were used. 5 were female, 2 male. They were from 4 different countries of origin originally. The courses that they were teaching were EAP writing courses, 7. 2 were pre-university, pre-sessional. 3 were on 100 level or stage 1 for academic credit, and 2 were more advanced 200 level courses also for academic credit. The courses were taught in 5 different institutions in 3 cities in New Zealand. Courses involved approximately 3 to 6 hours a week instruction for a semester of 12 weeks, with 15 to 25 learners in each tutorial group. They were all EGAP courses, genre-based. You can see the content was key academic genres, writing processes, technical skills, sentence and paragraphs, grammar and vocabulary. So although this is different in New Zealand from in the UK and elsewhere, I hope you can map what I'm saying onto the kinds of courses that are taught in the UK and where they're located. The learners were future and enrolled undergraduates in arts, science and business. As I said, they were EGAP courses. There was a range of nationalities, mostly from East Asia. Their IELTS levels in the pre-sessional were approximately 5, IELTS 5 to 6, and in the enrolled students 6 to 7 to IELTS 7.5. The data sources. My primary data source was field notes from observations. I carry out 4 to 6 observations over a 4-week period for each teacher. Each observation was of an entire class lesson of 90 to 120 minutes. I supplemented this with course documents and teaching materials and transcriptions of 5 to 6 interviews with each teacher, each interview being about half an hour. 1 interview before I started the observation set, 1 at the end, and the others after each observation. The analysis is inductive. Instances of collaborative writing were identified, categorised and encountered. Analysis is audited by an experienced colleague. So to start reporting on the findings, and again I'm just reporting on the ones that related to collaborative writing, I identified 1 to 3 occurrences of collaborative writing in 6 of the 7 teachers over 4 to 6 lessons. So I guess on average that means most of the teachers, almost all of them, used this instructional strategy maybe twice over 5 to 6 lessons. So something they used reasonably regularly. Obviously it's part of their instructional repertoire, not something they did every lesson, of course. Okay. The stages in the collaborative writing episodes, again, they didn't all proceed in the same way, but these were kind of the typical stages that I identified in the data. Collaborative writing usually had a pre-phase, a pre-writing discussion phase to activate learners' prior knowledge and arouse their interest in the topic, some kind of discussion of the topic and the text type. To familiarise learners with key features of the text type, model examples were presented and discussed. Both flawed models and achievable models and professional models were all used by different teachers. And discussion, for example, with paraphrase and summary of useful composing processes. Learners in one class wrote drafts in preparation for the collaborative stage, so they had that kind of extra scaffolding and assistance of having a draft that they could use. Here's the main thrust of my talk today, the collaborative or scaffolded writing. Teachers didn't start with a blank board. They often got learners to build up a diagram or a list of content for a specific text as a starter stimulus, so they weren't kind of eliciting from out of thin air. In the main task, they worked together to negotiate text content. Suggestions for new content were made by any student or elicited from students. If they weren't forthcoming, the teacher may help out. More capable students may be drawn upon to contribute. These contributions were then evaluated and discussed by the class, discussed by the teacher, revised. Sometimes the teacher wrote up 2 or 3 different contributions, and the class discussed which ones would be the best, which ones would fit in best, and selected by consensus. And in this way, a class text was composed. The text in progress was displayed, either written up by hand on a whiteboard or keyed in and projected onto a screen. And then there was always a post phase where learners worked individually or in groups to consolidate this learning by completing another segment or part of the essay or lit review, whatever kind of text they were studying, on their own or in groups. Or they composed a new example of the same text type. For the shorter ones like cause and effect or process, they might compose a new example on their own or with a partner. I'm going to just talk you through 2 sample episodes so that you can really see how this worked out in practice. The first one is from a pre-university, pre-sessional course. It was a process text. In the pre-phase, learners created a coherent process text from 6 sentences linked chronologically but lacking cohesion markers and transition signals. So they got the 6 bold sentences, they had to put them in order and add some cohesion markers and transition signals. And this was their draft, which they compared with a partner. In the collaborative stage, they used this kind of draft to make suggestions to the class for the class text which was being constructed based on their drafts. Errors were identified and the class discussed the best options for linkers and content revisions to create a cohesive text. For example, the fact that if you use pronouns may have to become pronouns in a process text if it's being repeated, reference markers, all kinds of cohesion devices were discussed then and built into the text. In this way, a class version was composed. It was then photocopied and distributed in the next lesson for learners to compare it with their original drafts in the pre-phase. The post-phase involved learners independently constructing a process text with support from a diagram on a different topic. My second example is from a more advanced level class, and it's a paraphrase text. The teacher led a discussion on paraphrase, its purpose, its features, composing stages, use of synonyms and reporting verbs, and learners evaluated sample paraphrases, both model ones and flawed. In the collaborative phase, the teacher elicited options for paraphrasing a text. Suggestions for possible content and linking devices were commented on, added to or altered by the teacher and other learners in discussion, and a text was produced collaboratively. Working in pairs, learners read a short text and made notes. This is the post phase. They read a short text and made notes on their text. Then they paraphrased their text orally to their partner. They commented on the quality of their partner's paraphrase and then went back and worked on their own draft independently. In the interviews, teachers made a number of comments about collaborative writing. They may not have used that term. I don't think they did use the term collaborative writing, but the kinds of tasks that I had just observed, why did you do that? What were the benefits of it? And I think their comments are interesting. They said it raised learners' awareness of complex task demands and useful strategies. That the demand of writing a paraphrase and a summary is a huge for these learners. It kind of broke it down, it made it more achievable, it taught them a way in and a pathway through. It provides valuable feedback on class motivation, level of skill and developmental needs. The teachers learned how the class was doing, whether they were coping at all, whether they had no idea and would have to go back for more direct instruction, and what their developmental needs were. It also identified individual learners who may need additional support, the learners whose contributions were either non-existent or were way off task. It provided opportunities for immediate support and feedback to students, and it required learners to listen to, learn from and evaluate peer contributions. Further benefits. It demonstrates to learners, they said, that there's no single version. Learners want to know what's the right answer, what's the model. Well, the process of constructing collaboratively means there were several right answers or good enough models, and these were presented on the whiteboard and discussed. That all of these versions might be quite acceptable, not just one. It can provide insights into composing processes. Sometimes if the class got stuck, the teacher did a think aloud in terms of like maybe summary or paraphrasing what the teacher's composing processes would have been. I didn't see it done with a capable student, but there's no reason why that couldn't also happen. So the students could actually listen to the teacher composing a bit of the text on the board. It raises learners' awareness of the recursiveness in writing. We know that learners often write from beginning to end and then hand it in. That is cycles of composing and editing. And that editing at one part of the text may mean you have to go back and change an earlier part of the text because it no longer fits. And all of this is demonstrated through the collaborative writing work. It avoids an exclusive process on product or focus on product. In fact, it's focusing on process and product at the same time. And it produces a quality text exemplar that can be further analysed as a model. It provides opportunities for students to talk constructively about their writing and to ask questions. And it can boost confidence, both in the individual learners if they make a contribution that gets accepted and written up, and in the class group when they as a class can produce this quality text. You know, this is our text that we produced, and it's quite good. I think we can see there are a number of themes that collaborative modelling really makes the process much more transparent. It opens it up for examination and learners can see their way in. It's no longer opaque and hidden. Also, it provides a lot of feedback to the teacher, and it's learners working together, listening and learning from each other. Teachers, of course, also made cautionary remarks about the use of this instructional technique. They pointed out that it's cognitively demanding for both the teacher and the learners. They suggested that episodes might be only 10-15 minutes long for weaker groups of students, going up to maybe 20-30 minutes maximum. Spread over 2 lessons if necessary. It is a cognitively demanding class and learners will lose concentration quite quickly. They pointed out that preparation by the teacher is important with regard to the expected features of the text product, the focus of instructional attention, and appropriate composing processes, so that the teacher has to kind of have a map in their head about the way things might go. Text construction tasks need to be within the capabilities of all or most learners in the class, and I think if they're too difficult and only a few learners can contribute, that's not going to work. It has to be within their ZPD, and adequate pre-task construction and learner preparation is important. And you can see some of them actually let the learners do a draft first, so they had something to contribute from. It can be difficult to persuade weaker learners to participate, particularly in larger and less motivated classes. And all contributions, of course, need to be respectfully received by the learner, by the teacher and class members. The discussion comments are where I'm coming in now with my comments as a researcher and as an EAP teacher. It seems to me that collaborative writing follows the scholarly recommendations we've been given for genre-based instruction and social learning. It can be a useful and engaging option in the practice phase, and it has these benefits. It's a whole activity. It focuses simultaneously on process and product, on macro and micro elements and how they work together to create a complete text, rather than single elements in isolation. Feedback by peers and teacher pushes learners beyond their current level of skill and understanding, so it's pushing the ZPD. It's a social activity that gives learners opportunities to make their own contributions and meaning, not just internalising knowledge that's been transmitted to them. They are creating knowledge, they're creating a text. Again, me as a researcher and teacher, collaborative writing tasks are more likely to be successful, it seems to me, if the pre and the post stages ensure that learners are already familiar with the text type, they're familiar with useful and relevant composing strategies, they have opportunities for independent pair and individual practice afterwards or even before. They're made aware of the purposes and benefits of this type of task and what the point of it is, and that they are given the opportunity to reflect on and self-assess their performance through maybe keeping a learning log or survey. The study, I think, showed the role of interaction and collaboration among learners and between learners and the teacher to develop EAP writing skills. It showed how collaborative writing complements attention to text products and individual composing processes, and in the larger study I was looking at all of them. The importance of tasks in the EAP classroom that arouse learners' interest and social involvement, and the importance of the phase that comes after explicit instruction and before independent work. That phase that provides practice through scaffolded assistance to bridge the gap between learners' developmental needs and the EAP writing course goals. That isn't my office either. There is a bit more coherent version of this talk just come out in ELTJ. Okay. And that's my email address. And those are the references. Thank you. Yes. Are there any questions or comments or? Yes.
As part of your data collection, did you collect any comments and perceptions of the students?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. That would have been interesting, but no, that would be another study. The study was an exploratory one, so I wasn't looking for modelling. I wasn't even aware that it existed. This came out of the data, and that's the kind of the flip side of a study like this, that you really need to have to go back and start again. And the problem is once you're saying to teachers, I want you to do collaborative modelling in your lesson, then it's not quite the same as when it comes out spontaneously, but that's the only way of doing it, I guess, would be to ask a teacher specifically to include that, or to do it yourself. Yeah. Yes?
Did you do any collaborative kind of writing using online tools? So,
No, tell me, how would that work?
Sorry?
How would that work?
I'm not sure it would work in an in-class context.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would kind of have them working on different screens and commenting on their writing and then grouping them differently and putting something together in that way. Or offline.
They did compose a literature review in an e-lab on computer screens. They did that together, but that wasn't with the teacher. The teacher went round the class and monitored it, but it was more peer modelling or social modelling. They were working with each other, not with the teacher. Yeah.
From your experience, with what genres does it work best in the classroom, this collaborative writing? Writing an abstract or writing a piece of literature review?
I saw it used, as I said, the pre-sessionals were doing things like cause and effect and process. The stage 2 classes were doing literature reviews, were doing summaries and paraphrase. I saw a literature review being done, yeah. I don't think the text type is a criteria. It depends, is it within the capabilities of that particular class? And is the class of a size and motivation that you can tackle that kind of task? Yeah. Yes.
Just a question. In my head, really, not necessarily for any particular answer. And that's, I wonder what their individuals feel about what has been written is in terms of their sense of ownership of what's been written.
The individual students.
Individual, so who owns the final product?
Okay.
And to what extent is there a sense of having a stake in that and a sense of accomplishment?
Well, I think for the weaker students, it was a plus because they got to produce something they couldn't produce on their own. Maybe the stronger students will think, well, I could probably do better on my own. So, but that text that they produced could then be further analysed. I think the students who were weaker, or the students who at least got something accepted into the final text. But even for those who didn't, they actually saw the process of a text being constructed, which hopefully will have a spin-off to when they have to start doing it themselves. Yeah.
I wonder what the teacher's sense of accomplishment or ownership and other things. Equally, you would say that you built into that whole, where is the sense of whose
text is it?
Whose is it?
I
Who's created?
Yeah.
Whose personality is it? And that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think in that case, it is very much a jointly collaborative text. It isn't. It hasn't got that kind of individual voice in it. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Thank you very much.